All right, welcome everyone to the School Marketing Show Live. If this is your first time with us, welcome. And if you are a returning viewer, we're so excited you're here again with us. If this is your first time here at Finalsite, professional development and education are really at the heart of our culture. So we use this show as a way to get the latest best practices and tips in front of schools and districts around the world, spanning topics like marketing, admissions, advancement, you name it, we cover it. And please feel free throughout the show to use the comment section, reach out to us, let us know what you're interested in learning, because that really helps drive our topics for future episodes. Now, we did take a brief 2-week hiatus. School marketing show, school marketing day rather, happened last week, and it was a big, awesome event. We had over 3,000 schools and districts around the world join us. So there was a lot of prep and excitement around that, but we're back for our regular show, and we're excited that you're here with us now. So today, we're actually going to be going back to a topic that we covered in episode 12, which was emails. So if you didn't catch episode 12, we talked about how to get families to actually open your emails. Now, one of our followers of the show actually reached out to us on Twitter with a really great point that open rates really are that first hurdle. And it's great that we talked about that. But what happens after they get to the email? How can you actually get your community to read that email? So we loved that question. We want to cover it in today's episode. So today we're going to cover first how to measure email engagement. So how can you even tell if someone's getting through the content in your email? What measures can you look at to gauge that success? 2, what makes recipients actually not want to read your emails? So we'll go over some of the mistakes you can make to avoid. And then what content really should go in your emails to up that engagement. And then lastly is a fun little thing. What does it mean to build your emails like a hamburger? And it's something we've talked about in the past. If you haven't heard it, Mia has a great analogy for it. So we'll get through that at the end of this episode. So if you're finding that your content just really isn't resonating in your email messaging, stop what you're doing right now and join us, and we'll talk about what you can do to improve. So first and foremost, I'll pass it over to Mia. She has some really great stats and information on how you can actually measure your email engagement.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And I feel like as two people who spend a lot of our time in email, I think that measuring email engagement is, gosh, it probably takes up a huge chunk of our hours each week here, at least on the Finalsite marketing team. So I feel like I'm super excited to talk about this today. But first, when it comes to measuring the engagement of your emails, obviously that first measure of engagement is that open rate, which is why we talked, in depth about it in episode 12. If people aren't opening your emails, you're not going to be able to get them to click. So once you've actually overcome that first hurdle, what should be those email engagement metrics you're looking at? The first thing that we obviously want to look at is that click-through rate. What percentage of those who opened our email are actually clicking through to read our content and engage with our content? Now, of course, the only way we can measure that is if we do have links in an email. So we always want to make sure that we do have some clickable content in our emails that drive them back to the website in order to measure that engagement. Now, there are a couple other metrics we can look at when we look at email clicks. We want to look at unique clicks. So you might open your email metrics and say like, wow, look, this email got 200 clicks. That's amazing. But if you look at unique clicks, sometimes those might only come from 10, 15, or 20 people, meaning those individuals in particular were super engaged with your email, but no one else actually clicked. So we want to look at the total click-through rate. We also want to take a look at that unique click-through rate. Now, if you're a Finalsite client, both of those metrics as well as open rate are available in Finalsite messages, and you can also get key insights into who exactly is clicking in each email. So you can actually track down some of those super engaged parents and potentially even turn them into parent ambassadors. So that's really good insight you can get there as well. Now, you might be wondering, well, what is a good click-through rate? What should I be looking at? So we did an analysis of 500 million emails sent on the Finalsite platform, and the average click-through rate was 5.6%. Now, of course, that is the average click-through rate across newsletters, promotional emails, maybe emails that don't even have links. That is an aggregate, but it is a really good benchmark for you to use as you start to analyze your emails. Now, keep in mind that with anything, it's all kind of going to shift with how many people actually are sent the email. So across the board, if you send an email to 10 people, usually your open rate and click-through rate are going to be a lot higher than if you send your email to 1,000 people. So just take all of that into consideration as you begin to measure the engagement of your emails. But I would say that 5.6% is a really good measure on your typical email newsletter or your promotional emails that you're sending. Now, if you have the time to go through and aggregate your own email engagement, I would recommend to definitely take a look at those average open rates and click-through rates on your newsletters by division or by school and create your own set of benchmarks. But again, that 5.6% I feel like is a really good starting place. Now, outside of clicks, there is one more thing you can look at, and that would be your unsubscribes. So people who, and your bounces. So you have unsubscribes, people who are receiving your emails and saying, no way, not anymore. I'm sick of hearing from the school. And then bounces, people who actually just don't receive your email because it's somehow bounced in their inbox, whether due to bad data, or it could actually be due to the fact that your school is sending too many emails and getting too many bounces, and they're seeing your school as spam. So those two things can also interfere with your open and click-through rates there. But I think that covers email data. So when it comes to creating that content, Kristen, and putting together these emails, I know you have lots of insight into, of course, first, what would make parents not want to engage with an email, and then, of course, after that, what would make them want to engage with your email. So let's start with what would make parents not want to read your emails. I feel like it's always an immediate gut check to people who are listening, like, oh, dang it, I'm doing that, and I shouldn't be doing that. I'm going to immediately go fix that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, in episode 12, we talked about getting, more families to open your emails. And that's great. If you're following all of those best practices and you get clicks through on your email, but your email is a disaster, then you're not going to get the engagement that you're looking for. So we'll first go through some of those mistakes to avoid. First and foremost, I think it's one of the bigger mistakes that happens often is not paying attention to the actual needs and wants of the audience that you're sending your emails to. So it's probably an age-old issue within schools and districts. If you have different teams who just really want their content going into your emails, or they really want their information going out to all of your community, you can run into the issue of just maybe sending out emails that don't actually match what, say, athletics parents want to hear about. They would probably want to hear about what's going on in the athletics community at your school, but someone who's not a parent of an athletic child may not want that information. So making sure that you're not putting all of that information that every single team at your school wants put out there to all of your parents or all of your community, making sure that you're actually thinking, okay, what is this group of parents, community members, alumni, what do they actually want to hear from us? And that'll give you a really good gut check, looking at the content of your email, looking at your send list and saying, okay, does this make sense for everyone? And that probably goes into a second mistake that you can avoid. They kind of go hand in hand, is sending too many emails because you don't have segmented lists. So making sure, very similarly to what I just said, thinking about what content you want to get out to different audiences and actually creating specific lists for those audiences so that you're not sending all of your information to everyone. Probably one of the worst things that could happen is if you're sending 5 emails in a week to everyone. So everyone's seeing your name pop up again and again in their emails, and it's not exactly important information that they need to know. Then they'll get a little bit of email fatigue and just stop actually reading your emails because they'll find that they're not often getting the information they're interested in. So why read the next email? So you can fall into that, kind of pitfall there with not providing the best content for the best audience at the right time. So making sure you segment those lists is super important. I think also being too self-serving, so being maybe too promotional, which we'll get into with what content should go into your emails. I think on social media specifically, we often say to use the 70-20-10 rule, which really is meaning 70% of your content should be more engaging than that last 20% that's more promotional or shared content, and the last 10% as well that just kind of all goes hand in hand with that more, come to our upcoming open house, consider donating in our fundraiser. Those kinds of pieces of content should be on the less amount compared to the content that you're trying to actually engage with your community with. So I think that still, again, maybe go with a grain of salt, because obviously email is a different world than social media, but keeping that in mind when you're sending out all of your communications, including on email, that you want to be able to think about your entire audience journey, where your families are at, what they're interested in, and providing content that will actually be engaging to them rather than, just self-serving. And then again, being a little too content heavy, which Mia will get into later when we talk about this hamburger analogy. If you have too much content, if it's too paragraph heavy, I would say, our attention spans as humans are less than that of a goldfish. We have about, an 8 to 7 second attention span. So if you open an email, it's a bunch of paragraphs. There's no kind of breakup of content, you're not going to engage with that email at first glance because it will just be too overwhelming. Another thing to think about in terms of the text is having too small of text. So making sure that your text, and this is very important on mobile devices, is at least 16-point font across all devices will really make sure that even on those smaller devices, your entire community will be able to actually read the email. And that goes into my next point of not being mobile friendly, making sure that your emails are really designed with the mobile user in mind. I would say a big majority of those who read their emails do so first on their phones. And you'll find, if you're at work, you'll sometimes look at your email on your computer, but you'll probably find that a lot of your family members are looking at their email on their phones. So making sure that that text is not too small, making sure that you're not using too many columns in your email, because that may look great to you on desktop. You're able to get a lot of information in there. When it scales down to a mobile device, it will all stack and it will all look extremely overwhelming to someone who just opens it on a mobile device. So keeping that mobile user in mind will really help out. And then lastly, just making sure that you actually have pops of imagery. If you don't, having some sort of eye-catching element, unless of course it's maybe like a last-minute email that you need to get out in an emergency situation. Most emails, if we are thinking about that 70% of engaging content, making sure that you have some sort of pops of imagery in there. If you don't, it won't catch the eye and you won't get as much engagement. So that kind of goes into the next point of taking a look at what content should go into your email. So I would say first things first, and this goes back to Mia's point earlier about data, is that data should really drive as many decisions as it can. So remember those click rates that we just discussed that Mia had brought up earlier? They give you key insight into which email content your recipients actually find most engaging or least engaging if those click rates are lower. So this works especially well in newsletters. If it's something that's recurring, you can take a look at that data, see, okay, this email barely got any clicks. What can we do to make this a little more engaging to make sure that we up those clicks moving forward? Definitely, first and foremost, look at your data if you can to be able to help drive your decisions. But I would say for the most part, when we're looking at what types of emails you're sending, you can kind of bucket them into 4 types, generally speaking. I think first and foremost, obviously your newsletters, you likely all have these. They're more e-bulletin type content. They're sent on a regular basis. They follow a standard format and they collect just notable pieces of content from your school or district over a set period of time. On the flip side of that is more promotional emails. So this includes your prospecting emails if you're an independent or international school, if you have any open house invitations or virtual open house invitations these days, any sort of event promotions, fundraising outreaches, and so on. Those all kind of get bucketed into your promotional emails. And then you have the more informational emails. So you're not exactly trying to get someone to engage with your school or district. They're not also exactly an emergency, but maybe it's something that you still need to get out aside from your regular newsletter. It could be information to log into your parent portal, things like that, something that's just straight information that's being sent out. And then lastly, the 4th type is emergency communications. So of course you may run into situations that calls for an immediate email to all of your contacts, not thinking about all of the goals of engagement that we just talked about. And that can happen. But I would say, and I think that this is an important piece of thinking about your overall email engagement, is that email should not be used as your primary communications tool. There's a time and place for any emails or any pieces of content that are meant to engage versus inform. And I think your emails are a great piece of, or it's a great tool, I should say, to really think about your entire funnel. Think about, okay, is this a family that we're trying to prospect to enroll in our school versus is this a family that's already enrolled with our school, but we want to engage with them, really help those parents become evangelists of the school? Email is great for those things, but when it comes to something like an emergency communications piece, you don't want to rely on your families actually, constantly refreshing their emails to get that important information. And so, like I said, when you're thinking about your emails, I would first identify your goal, look at your data, see what's worked in the past, let that drive the email. Think again, if we're trying to prospect a family, what type of content could we put them through to tell them a little more about our school, maybe get them into an email automation system, if you're a Finalsite client through workflows, making sure that you are hitting them with very regular communications that kind of moves them through into that enrollment phase. And if you're looking for more school brand evangelists, what kind of content can you put in things like your newsletters to really engage with them and make them have a positive mindset about your school? So those are the few things that you can try to avoid and kind of update to put the best foot forward with your emails moving forward to get those clicks up once someone actually views your email. And that, I think, transitions really well into Mia's really fun hamburger analogy. So Mia, can you tell me, how can you build your emails like you would build a hamburger? I'm sure everyone is interested to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of my favorite analogies to use when it comes to email building. And I think that it's because I just think it really simplifies it. So on the grand scale, right, when we build an email, we want it to be just right. I feel like it's kind of like finding that Goldilocks version of your email, right? Like you don't want too much content or too little content. And like with a cheeseburger or like with a hamburger, when you make it too big, when there's just too much stuff on it, it's just so overwhelming. So I feel like part of this hamburger analogy is just teaching individuals on how to find that perfect Goldilocks amount of content by balancing the content in your email the same way that you would balance the toppings that you'd add to your burger. So let's dive in. So first things first, let's talk about the buns, the hamburger buns. We always want a top bun and a bottom bun because without it, the email falls apart the same way a burger would fall apart. So that top bun, we want something that helps signify what kind of email that we're receiving. It should have some really significant branding that signifies which, for a district in particular, which school it's coming from. For parents with children in multiple schools within a district, we want to see a particular color or a particular mascot that signifies, okay, this is the middle school Mustangs. This is obviously for my daughter. I'm going to read this content. The same thing can be said for a private school. If you want to segment your newsletters by division, things like that, or if you have a specific athletics header or things like that, we just really want to make sure that what the first thing that we see basically signifies the school and the type of content they can expect to see. Now, the bottom bun, while it's obviously not as prominent, is still really important because it helps conclude your email. And what we want to do at the bottom of this email is provide any contact information or just some branding elements that basically say, hey, this email is over. So that can be social media URLs, a contact, a phone number or email, or even some important next steps to take, especially in some of those promotional emails. So that's really the outside of the email, what's going to hold all of that content together. Now, when it gets to the middle, the first thing that we think of when we think of a hamburger is we think of the meat, or if you're a vegetarian, some type of meat substitute, whatever that might be. But it's really going to be the most important thing in your email. And for a newsletter, this might be your featured stories, or it might be your series of featured stories. For a promotional email, it might be that one piece of content you want a prospective family to click on in order to engage with your content, whatever that might be. Now, kind of like when you're building a burger, if you've ever been to In-N-Out in California, you can get a double, a triple. You can get as many patties as you want. You can get 100 patties on your In-N-Out burger. Okay. We don't want to do that with our emails. I feel like we really have like a 4 to 5 patty max when it comes to our emails here. We really just want to keep it, as simple as possible. And I would dare to say, I would opt for less content and more sends than to put everything into a single email newsletter. And we've actually seen this here at Finalsite, because we used to send a weekly blog digest and a monthly blog digest. And across the board, the monthly blog digest got significantly lower engagement because it had like 15 or 20 blogs as opposed to 3. So think about your newsletters that way too. If you're sending a monthly newsletter, maybe sending something weekly can help clean up how many patties that you have on that burger, right? So that's the meat, the most important things that we need to get in there. And when you're building your email, I encourage you to think of, especially if a newsletter, like, okay, each week I have 5 patties on my buns. I have 5 patties. That way, if someone else comes to you and they're like, hi, I really need this in the newsletter, it's like, I'm sorry, it's not going to fit this week. Can it wait till next week? We really try to focus on only having 5 key pieces of content here. Now, of course, with the burger comes the toppings, lettuce, cheese, tomato, whatever you like to add to your burger. And like when we're building a burger, when we're building an email, when you add too many, it becomes a total mess and you don't even know what to do with it, right? So this is the toppings are your images, your bullet points, like those delightful little digestible pieces of content that are flurried throughout your email. And we just don't want too many of them. When it comes to images, we don't want a ton of images for load time, right? We don't want to bog down that email load time on a mobile device in particular with a lot of high-res images. So My recommendation is to usually keep an image for 1 or 2 of those feature stories in your newsletter and let the rest of them be text links, incorporate some emojis there. If we're talking about a promotional email here, again, I really wouldn't have more than 3-4 images max here. And we also just want to make sure that those have been resized and optimized for mobile, so that we're not putting, let's say, the tomato that's cut for a giant cheeseburger on a slider, right? We just want to make sure that that's perfectly curated for the email itself to help with load time. Now, those bullet points, those calls to action, all those other things that we might be adding to our email, social media links, again, we just want to keep it to the minimum, and we just want to keep it clean so that it's not overwhelming. I think the one thing that we can think about when it comes to email or our website or any type of communication that we send out is it's our job as communicators to provide clear direction. And it's very, very, very hard to provide clear direction when you're giving someone 10, 20, 30 options of what to do next. Your click-through rates are immediately going to go down. This is a case where more is not better, less is better. And it's because people only have so much attention, they only have so much time. We want to make sure that they get the content that they need to see, and we do that by simplifying what's in the emails itself. Now, of course, in addition to the buns and the burger and the cheese and the toppings, you might want to also add some secret sauce, which would be that one call to action that is the most important thing. And we're going to accent this in our email, maybe with a special background color. Maybe it's going to have a bigger image than everything else, whatever it is. And I would recommend to make your secret sauce whatever is really, really important to your families. Whatever content you see them engaging with, whatever content they're looking forward to, make this your secret sauce to help increase engagement there. And then, of course, in addition to all of this, you might have some condiments, some extra things that you just need to add into your emails to help you and your community achieve your goals. But whatever you do, it all has to fit between those 2 buns, and we just can't make it too big or too overwhelming. We want it to be like that perfect handheld burger size. This is not a fork and knife meal. All right. So that being said, that is my favorite analogy when it comes to creating an email, because I think it's really visual when you're sitting there, and especially when we're building our email newsletters. I think that's really an area where we can get totally out of hand. And we've done it here at Finalsite too. 20 blogs, you'll read all of them. No, you won't. You'll read 2 or 3. And that's why that's all we send now. But, I think it's really visual when you're looking at an email to just be like scrolling and be like, okay, like, this is not manageable, or okay, this is manageable. Do I have my top bun? Do I have my bottom bun? How many patties do I have? Do I have too many toppings? I just think it's really easy to look at your email and pinpoint, okay, this is overwhelming. And then one other thing about the hamburger bun analogy is that it's all one, like, we're in one column. I don't know another way to describe a burger, but we're not dealing with numerous little burger sliders. We're dealing with one handheld burger. And I think that speaks to the importance of building in that single panel design and not having 2, 3, 4 panels across your email that look great on desktop. And you're like, wait, my email isn't overwhelming. It's like, I can see it all at once. The second someone's on a mobile device, it's like crunch, 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 crunch. And it's just like down in a line, and they can't engage with it that same way. So I think it also encourages you to look at your email shape as if it were a hamburger itself, and saying, okay, top, middle, bottom, like that's it. So that being said, I hope everyone has saved room for hamburgers for lunch. And for those of you in California, I hope that you are not diving into an In-N-Out burger that is 100 patties tall as inspiration for your email newsletter. I hope both of those are a little bit more manageable if you're going there on your lunch break. To sign off for today, I would like to remind everyone that if you missed our amazing School Marketing Day event last week, we have about 50 hours of content recorded that you can now purchase. I shouldn't say now, beginning this Wednesday, you're going to be able to purchase for $100. So if you head on over to schoolmarketingday.com and head over and grab an all access pass, you can gain access to recordings from every single session from the day for an entire year for you and your team. So no need to purchase more than one of those in your school, just one of those, and you can share them with your entire team. So I think we're really excited to share this content in a different way than we ever have before. So if you did miss the day and you want to, grab a peek at some of that content, definitely grab your all access pass at schoolmarketingday.com. Now, next week, I mean, it is November, and I've been in a week-long debate now with my husband as to whether or not we can put up our Christmas tree. We are getting in the spirit here at Finalsite, and we will be talking about next week ways to celebrate your community during the holidays from a marketing and communications perspective. So we'll talk a little bit about Thanksgiving next week and how you can celebrate your community on social media and in email. And for those of you not in the US who don't celebrate Thanksgiving, you can use some of these best practices definitely to celebrate your community the entire holiday season. So we're really excited, I think, to get in the spirit, I think, starting here on the School Marketing Show and talk about those strategies next week. So we look forward to seeing you then. And in the meantime, make sure you grab your all access pass at schoolmarketingday.com.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.